So today we'll be finding out what the Native Americans were doing during the American Civil War. Last video I watched what happened to the Confederate soldiers after the American Civil War. So this should be fun. I would like to know what the Native Americans were doing, the people that were there before Christopher Columbus first landed in the United States or in the Americas. So let's see what they were doing during the American Civil War, because I'm thinking, which side were they on? Like, you know, at that point, the immigrants from Europe were already in control of the United States at that point. So what were the natives doing at that point in time? I would like to know. So let's check it out. If you are new, subscribe to the channel, and if you love this reaction, hit the like button. I really appreciate it. Let's get right into it.
When we think of the American Civil War, we often think of several things. Of its leaders like Abraham Lincoln and Jefferson Davis, of Confederate and Union troops duking it out in bloody combat, or of what the Civil War was all about. What isn't often considered is the role that Native Americans played in the conflict and how the Civil War affected them. So what did Native Americans actually do? Who did they side with, and what did they think of the American Civil War? It shouldn't surprise you that Native Americans weren't exactly keen on the white Americans who had progressively been taking more and more land from them over the previous centuries. The primary tribes that were affected by this were collectively known as the 5 civilized tribes who had previously been forced westward in the decades prior to the outbreak of the Civil War. These 5 tribes were the Cherokee, the Creek, the Seminole, the Chickasaw and the Choctaw, and all of them sided with the Confederacy, largely because they held the Washington government as responsible for their forced deportations, and also because many of them had economies dependent on slaves.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. I was actually thinking before the video that they will support the Union instead, because you know, fighting against slavery and things like that. So I would have been thinking that, okay, since their land was taken from them and they were taken over, kind of, so maybe they would have been supporting, you know, the liberation of slaves and things like that. But thinking about this now, it actually makes sense that they'll support the Confederates, because the white Americans that came to the United States, you know, took their land, you know, and the Union represented those white Americans. It definitely represented those white Americans. So, okay, I get it. And also the fact that
not in their entirety, of course. Many within these tribes had sympathies towards the Union with respect to abolitionism, and also because many of them had economies dependent on slaves. Not in their entirety, of course. Many within these tribes had sympathies towards the Union with respect to abolitionism. Not only that, but one major concern was the repercussions for choosing the wrong side. They'd already lost a lot, they didn't wish to lose more. These divisions ripped many tribes apart and led to people from the same family fighting for both sides. One man of particular importance was a Creek chief, Apothiahulo, who argued that Native Americans shouldn't get involved with the Civil War because it was the white man's problem. In response to this, the Confederate-aligned tribes attacked in late 1861, and Apothiahulo fled north into Kansas, where he would remain until his death in 1863. In early 1862, the Union launched an offensive into Indian lands, and despite the best efforts of the Confederate-aligned Native Americans there under the command of Standwatie, the Confederacy was beaten back. Soon after this, the Union captured the chief of the Cherokee, and by the end of the next year, it was in control of all of Native American territory. Did this mean that the war was over for Native Americans? No. In fact, many were sent eastward to go and fight there, whilst those that remained waged a guerrilla war. The primary leader of the Native American raiders was again Standwatie, and he spent over a year raiding Union supply trains. Watie was so good at his job that when the Confederates restructured the army, he was placed in command of all of its Native American units and promoted to the rank of Brigadier General. And despite the best efforts of Watie and the Native Americans in the West, the Union still won the war. And 2 months after General Lee's surrender, the Native American tribes capitulated as well. So after the war, what happened to the Native American tribes that sided with the Confederacy? Well, nothing good. All slaves owned by natives were to be freed and given full citizenship within the tribes. And whilst morally it was a good thing, economically it was absolutely devastating for these tribes. The tribes were also forced to sell much of their lands to the federal government at a reduced rate, the money raised from which was then promptly appropriated as war reparations. Of course, there were more than 5 tribes involved in the Civil War, but none of them came out of it well. Even those who weren't too involved, like the Comanches or the Cheyennes, were forced to sign similar documents which confiscated their lands and moved them to reservations. The federal government, soon headed by veterans of the Civil War who, for the most part, had a distaste for their former Native American enemies, ignored these treaties where it suited them. Tribes would lose yet more land, be placed on reservations, and would spend over a decade trying to fix the divisions which had plagued them during the Civil War.
Wow, that is interesting. I mean, if you think about it, it actually really makes sense, and I'm actually looking at it like it's easy to sit down in the modern times and maybe judge the Native Americans. I mean, you guys, you claim to be oppressed, but you supported slavery and supported the Confederates, things like that. It's easy to sit down here and blame them for that, but we were not there. We don't understand what was the repercussions. I mean, as you heard there in the video, there were things like economic problems. If they were to lose slaves, there could be economic problems for them, and it may not have been moral, but I don't understand where they were coming from. I do, really, I do. I'm not really someone that gets emotional about these things. I do understand that our standard of living, the way we lived life, the way human beings lived life 200 years ago is not the same way we live now. And I'm not condoning slavery. I'm not condoning any of those things. I'm just saying that judging past actions using present lenses is a bit naive. It's a bit myopic, in my opinion. I think someone has to be a bit logical when you look at history. You can't just look at history with rose-tinted glasses. You have to look at history in a logical way, and understand why people were doing things at each point in time in the past. So, what do you guys think about this video? I would like to know what you think. All Americans watching this video, or Native Americans, if you're a Native American, let me know what you think about this. I'd like to know. And thank you for watching. Like the video on your way out if you really love this reaction, and if you want to support this channel, support me, guys. Every time I have to on my generator to shoot these videos, and I really need you guys' help to like this video. You lose nothing from liking the video. Hit that like button and also subscribe to the channel if you are new. I really appreciate it. I'll see you on the next one. Peace.